Hey, it's a new week and there's new news, and as you can see that I haven't been getting out much, but I wanted to do an update from my video last week to talk about some of the things that I got right, some of the things that I got wrong, and one particular story that has been bothering me. So things that I've gotten right, the average number of daily increased cases continues to steadily come down, so that's good news. Um, when we look back at March 20th, you have new cases increasing at a rate of about 40%. And then over the next 2.5 weeks or so, you have that increase, starting to flatten out that curve. You have that increase going down to this week. We're about, around 10% of an increase from new cases, so that, we're headed towards the peak. John Hopkins likes to use a 5-day moving average, which I find to be very reasonable, and I appreciate them for doing that. It's so that the data doesn't get skewed and you don't have missing data from one day messing up what you're looking at. But I'm simply, again, taking the number of recorded cases per day and using that in a simple Excel spreadsheet to be able to see the average increase going down. There are some stories out there that can be troubling and deceiving, like in New York, something along the lines of highest recorded cases of coronavirus today or highest recorded deaths. Well, that is kind of a misleading headline. If there's one more case the next day, then of course it just has got to the highest number because there's one more. If there's one more death, the most recorded cases, but that's not actually what's going on. What is going on, as Governor Cuomo has said, is that they're seeing in New York City, the cases are starting to plateau. So new hospitalizations and deaths are plateauing. That is also very good news because, of course, that in the United States, they're the worst affected area. So again, indication that you're headed towards the peak. As far as Johns Hopkins goes, there are countries that have flattened the curve and apparently, past the peak, and it looks like they're saying that about Italy and Spain, which is also good news. Some things that I got wrong. I was wrong about the death rate. I thought that the death rate would remain around 2.1%, where it was on the 31st. Unfortunately, that hasn't been the case. As of Monday, the death rate was 2.9% nationally. And in New York City, the death rate back on the 31st was 2.6%, and it looks like as of the Monday, it was about 3.8%. So that death rate is unfortunately slowly but steadily going up. We are, as far as Johns Hopkins shows, with the 10 most affected countries by the coronavirus, we're the 9th least with a 2.9% death rate as of Monday. So we are still doing a good job, but that number looks like it's going up, and in the models and predictions, I believe that they're saying that it will continue to go up a bit. Governor Cuomo did say, which was encouraging, that they didn't have deaths in New York City because of lack of equipment. He basically said something along the lines of the people that, died, we couldn't save them. They weren't, they weren't going to be saved. So the death rate, unfortunately, is going up, but hopefully that won't be the case after the peak. The Germans were number 10 with the least death rate. So as the most affected countries, the Germans were had the least death rates. To leave it to the Germans, I guess. But a country that wasn't on there but has done an incredible job with containing and dealing with the coronavirus was South Korea. I watched a video from a friend on Facebook. They It was Asian boss, and he was interviewing the lead epidemiologist in South Korea. And if the CDC wants a country to learn some things from South Korea has a crazy close proximity to where the coronavirus actually started, but their country was fully prepared to be able to handle the testing, how to get tested, all of those things, to the point where they have an even lower death rate, I believe, than Germany. And in that video, if you end up finding it, it's Asian boss, and he's interviewing Kim Woo-ju. If you find it, it's about a 30-minute video, and it has some really informative stuff about. There's basically just a bunch of questions asked and some really informative stuff going on there. And I got a lot of information from it. It was very helpful. So the news story that's bothering me quite a bit was something that came out on Friday. DC's Mayor Muriel Bowser made an announcement of when they thought the peak would be in Washington, D.C., and the model that they're using to predict that. And they're saying that late June, early July is going to be the peak of cases in D.C., and it was very frustrating to hear them say that. I did, from the announcement, learn that there are, models out there in epidemiology, mathematical modeling for infectious diseases. They mentioned one that they were using, Chime, which has been developed by Penn Medicine, and I'll get into the numbers a little bit later of why I think that this is such an irresponsible thing to say, and why I just need to, kind of let other people know that this isn't right, what's going on. But COVID-19 hospital impact model for epidemics is the Chime model. There's also one out there, University of Washington's Institute of Health Metrics and Evaluation, IHME. That's the one that's being used, I believe, by the White House to talk about nationally that the peak would be on April 15th, April 16th. These models are based off of a SIR model of susceptible, infectious, and recovered. So that I started to look into it. I found it to be very interesting. The article from the Washington Post says that, under their prediction says, no model is perfect and none should be read for confident predictions. So it's like, okay, come on, like, are you serious? You just are saying this information that greatly affects everybody in the DMV area, for that matter, and now you're following it up with saying that it should not be used for confident predictions. Bowser did mention that they're using Chime because they want to be most prepared, but I think that when you start to look at the numbers that they're talking about, that I'll describe, I don't think that you can say, oh, we wanted to err on the safe side. I think that this is either stupidity, bad judgment, or there's some sort of political motivation here. And these are the people that we elect and put in place in places of power. They are the people in these trying times that are supposed to be leading us through, and we're supposed to be confident that the information that they're giving us is accurate. And this statement that they made has a lot of financial and psychological ramifications on the people that live around here. And like I said, I just find it, very frustrating, almost infuriating, and very irresponsible to have this sort of model and give this as a prediction. And so I'll tell you why. So Chime was actually open sourced by Penn Medicine, which is really cool. You can go online and you can actually use the model yourself. I don't know that DC is using it in the right way, because it seems like a model that's based for regional hospitals. Like Penn is using it for 4 of their hospitals to attempt to predict the amount of cases in the beds and things like that. But since it's open source, I went on and I attempted to try and put historical information into it to see what was happening in New York, because I thought if I can get the appropriate numbers in for New York, which I already know, I can adjust them for DC, and then I can get an accurate idea of what's going on in DC. I couldn't do it for New York. When I began to look at the SIR models and the Chime model and just the mathematical modeling of infectious diseases, I kind of learned or realized pretty quickly that the math was beyond my comprehension, and I thought about potentially trying to learn it. And then I kind of I switched gears because I don't think that that's my expertise. Someone that has a math background would be better at doing that. I feel like I have some pretty good judgment, and I'm able to discern things pretty well by looking at a bunch of evidence and come up with a conclusion. So I think that that's where I'm better suited. So the Chime model, I couldn't get it to work for the historical New York data to predict where the plateau that Governor Cuomo was saying. All I could get it to do was show this long curve that wouldn't wouldn't be gone till June or July. So let's look at some numbers. Muriel Bowser's saying that towards the end of June, they expect that they'll need 2,992 beds in their hospital for people that are infected with coronavirus. So there's a few things that I'm assuming here. I'm assuming that their hospitalization rate is about average of 20%. In New York City, it was around 22%. The Chime model, their default value is 5%, which obviously would be really low. But so I'm assuming the hospitalization rate is around 20%. I'm also assuming that they're using the population of DC, 750 to 760,000 people, not the DC metro area, because the numbers would be very different if it was the DC metro area, which is about 6.5 million. I just don't see why they would use that number. They're specifically saying DC, but around DC, for instance, in Alexandria, there's a hospital. There's a hospital in Fairfax County in Virginia. In Virginia, there's a hospital in Reston. There's a hospital in Southern Maryland. There's a hospital near College Park in Maryland. There's a hospital in Bethesda in Maryland. And then in DC, there's like 4 or 5 hospitals. So I'm settling with the number of 750,000 when I'm looking at this. So you take the amount of beds, and then you take the amount of folks that are there, and you can get what you would expect the amount of people to be infected to be. If the 20% of people that need a hospital are 2,992, then you have about 13,500 people that are infected. So let's look at what percentage of DC that is. So you take the 13,500 people that are infected, and you divide it by the total population, and you find that it's about 1.8% of people that are infected in DC is at the peak. That's a pretty high number. You probably don't know this, and I bet I could ask a majority of people on the street, and they wouldn't have a clue. What is the percentage of people in New York City, the worst affected city in the United States? What's the percentage of people there that have coronavirus? The percentage of people that have coronavirus in New York City is less than 1%. If we're truly towards a peak for New York City, and then you assume that about at the same amount of people will get it as you come down, you would be left with around 120 to 130,000 people with coronavirus in New York City that had gotten it. That's 1.5%. So with these 2,900 beds that Muriel Bowser is predicting, she's saying that 1.8% of their people will get coronavirus. And guess what? That's twice what New York City had at the peak. So you really think that Washington, D.C. is going to be twice as worse as New York City at their peak? I don't think so. Another thing that the model says clearly is they think that the peak is going to be in 2.5 months. So when you look at the cases in DC and New York and DC had their first cases around the same time. So why the spread going so much longer than any other place in the country? Like I said, the percentage of average of new cases per day, or the average number of new cases per day, is going down towards a peak already. So why is the nation going to have a peak in the middle of April, and DC is going to have one at the end of June? I don't think that DC would say that they think that there's going to be a peak in the United States in April. That's actually what the Institute for Health Metrics and Evaluation Model is saying. So I don't think that they would agree with that. But I just don't see DC having twice as much of an infection rate and also taking 2 to 3 months longer than New York City in this. I think that it's ludicrous, but I'll let you judge that for yourself. When you look at the IHME model nationally, you actually see a higher hospitalization rate of about 27%, and the cases that they're predicting as of the 15th, it looks like about 522,000 cases in the United States. The death rate in the model for IHME, I also have some difficulty because, like I told you, I was wrong about the death rate increasing. It is increasing slowly, but they have a death rate, it seems, of about 7%, with 37,000 people dying as of the 15th. And I just don't see where these models are getting all of this information from. But like I said, the things that I'm using are basic math, and not having a background in epidemiology to be able to add some things in. But so the DC news really bothered me. I think that it's going to have some real negative effects on this area, and I think that there should be ramifications for whether or not you get something so wrong. I think that it's ridiculous, and if you get something so wrong, I think that's not acceptable to me. So a couple things that I'll say that I've learned from looking into all of this information is that obviously hindsight is 20/20. So a lot of the information that I'm looking at is historical data. I feel like part of the thing that I'm doing is taking that. I'm also using deductive reasoning to be able to figure out where these people are getting their models from, and then evaluating the two and saying what is more likely, this thing to happen or that. And that's how I come to a lot of conclusions. And so whether it's talking about coronavirus or other political things that are happening, I try and evaluate a lot of the information to come up with, and use critical thinking to come up with, a conclusion, because I'm not going to just always accept what people are saying to me. And I think that this is a great example of something where we have to be critical and we have to be tough on the people that, they're in leadership, because we've trusted them to be able to guide us through these things, and they should be held to a higher standard. I love the thing that I get often is that, this statement of, oh, I'm taking coronavirus very seriously. If the implication is that I'm not taking coronavirus very seriously, I have some words for you. But because I don't like that side of me, I try and avoid that. But I feel like I'm taking it, very seriously as well. It's just I'm coming up with different conclusions to some of this stuff. And yeah, if it takes me criticizing an expert to get a piece of information out there that might help people adjust or people deal with what's going on in their lives, then yes, of course, I'm going to criticize an expert. I don't care, if they're an expert or not, especially in this case where something seems so blatantly wrong. I will be critical. Hopefully, it's constructive criticism and helps people to move to, a higher conclusion. Another thing that is clear that Governor Cuomo has said, I think Samuel Jackson may have on the late show reiterated this, but people should stay at home. Governor Cuomo said April 30th, stay at home. He extended it till at least April 30th. Down here in Virginia, we have some data of like June 10th, and I think that has to do with their modeling. I think that is wrong, and I think that hopefully that will change. But yes, stay in your home till at least April 30th. The worst thing that could happen is if we went out prematurely while the issue was still rising. We haven't hit the peak, still rising, and then it started to reinfect people. That's that susceptible number in the SIR model, and that needs to be as low as possible. I think the one variable in the equation that epidemiologists and their models didn't consider has been the social distancing. I think that's been the most effective tool to combat this, and they weren't able to calculate how much it would actually combat the spread of the virus. But we're living in unusual times. I've spoken to parents, grandparents, friends, and older folks, and they say that in their lifetimes they can never remember these sorts of stay-at-home orders or the way that it's affecting, our society and the world, for that matter, on a massive scale. So the fact that we are staying at home, that when we are in groups, it's not groups of 10 or more, we're staying 6 feet away from each other, and we're washing our hands and not touching our face. A combination of all those things is what I believe is the unexpected variable that they haven't accurately put into their models, and it's the positive thing. It's all good news when the virus goes way faster than we thought it would, has a lower death rate than we thought it would, and doesn't affect people as badly as we thought it would. So hopefully this is all good news. Until the last patient, something to think about, until the last patient leaves the hospital, the nurses and doctors and the people that I don't even know about that take care of these people and help these people to heal and to go home, they're going to be working as hard as they can. So when you're thinking about staying at home, these are the people that will still be on the front lines. They the amount of work that I haven't personally heard stories from nurses and doctors, but I've seen a lot of videos that were describing it, and the amount of work they're doing crazy hours to try and help people. And so while there's still people sick, they're going to still be working as hard as they can. And once we get to the peak, we got all of that time to come down. I'm hoping that it's a quick, that the cases, people that are in 7 to 10 day hospital stays are getting out as the number is also coming down, and then it's a rapid reduction. But the nurses and doctors and administrators and other people that work in the hospitals and all of the other places that care is given are going to be working very hard. So that's another encouragement to stay at home. I think one of the important things at the end of all this is that we should find the cause. And I don't know, when you look back at SARS in 2002, 3, and 4, they didn't find the cause of it, and actually even the vaccine. Now that is a coronavirus. It's a respiratory infection. It's similar to COVID-19. So they didn't find the cause of it, and they didn't come up with a vaccine. That's problematic in my book. That means that you did a pretty good job, but you didn't find the cause and fix it. So we can continue to get prepared and be better prepared to deal with these sorts of things, which maybe next year. We might have to fight coronavirus off again next year. But if you don't find the cause of these things, you're not solving the problem. And that is where I think that my friends who say trust science are going to find that that's where science and politics intersect. When you start trying to find cures and find out why things happen the way that they do, sometimes you run into a roadblock and it doesn't get solved. And that's just the unfortunate part about it all. And then my final thing that I'd like to say, because I'll probably stop doing videos and stop talking about this, is a personal reflection that I had recently. And when I heard that there was a stay-at-home order, I was bothered by it. Of course, I thought I'm going to be stuck in my apartment, and I'm not going to be able to exercise the freedoms that I normally do, and it's not going to, I'm not going to be happy then. But what I realized was it wasn't that I didn't like my apartment as much as I think it was I was just dissatisfied or not happy with my life. And it brought that into clarity for me. If I was out there living one of my dreams, like hiking a long trail or building a house on a piece of property or, raising a farm and doing that, I don't think a shelter in place or stay at home order would bother me at all. So I think, one thing that I've learned from this is that I should be pursuing my dreams. And so that I'd encourage other people that when you think about what you want to do with your life, try and figure out how you can start doing that, because things like this come around and we see that life can be cut short and it doesn't last forever. So, make sure that you're thinking about the things that you want to do in your life, and how you can go about doing them. So I guess what I'll say is stay safe and carry on.